For WXXI, this is Connections. Filling in for Evan Dawson, I'm Gino Finelli. Today's connection was made last Tuesday. That was the day the city's new budget went into effect. The budget is the last of Mayor Malik Evans' first term in office and is dubbed his prosperity budget. And it's a relatively measured financial document. There's no massive new initiatives. The property tax levy is held flat and marks a $27 million drop from last year's budget. So we're here to talk about the budget today, and I'm joined by Mayor Malik Evans. Mayor, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
City Council President Miguel Melendez. Miguel, thanks for being here.
Of course, thank you.
And City Council Member Mitch Gruber. And we're going to start talking about the budget, but first we're going to talk about the news of the day and have the mayor comment on the potential mountain lion, tiger, big cat, whatever it may be that was caught on a Ring camera on Grand Avenue.
Yes, just let me say, I just gave an update to a bunch of folks on this. I got off the phone with Deputy Chief Carrera a little while ago. So far, we have not seen any evidence of any mountain lion, tiger, saber-tooth tiger roaming in Northeast Rochester. We followed up on the Ring camera footage. We have actually even put up drones in the air. We've alerted the DEC that there might be some type of animal. But the most important thing we want to tell Rochesterians is that if you see, and also, by the way, all the animals at the Seneca Park Zoo are accounted for. But we want to tell Rochesterians that if you see any wild animal, tiger, lion, bear, whatever it is, make sure you call 911, shelter in place, but more importantly, don't approach the animal. But right now, we have not seen any evidence of any wild animal being on the loose in Northeast Rochester.
It's a weird story.
Yes.
You can read it. I just published this story at WXXInews.org. It's a weird video. You're going to see a lot of hoaxes on social media over the next few days. This video itself might be a hoax, but it's a pretty good one if it is one. So weird stuff. But we're here to talk about the budget. And to start, I want to go broad strokes, overhead view of what are the highlights to you all in this year's budget. And then we can go into some more granular details here. But Mayor, I'll start with you. This budget, you dubbed the, quote, prosperity budget. What are some of the highlights that stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, some of the highlights are, first off, you said not really new initiatives. Actually, what it is a continuation of huge initiatives that we started off early in the year, and we're able to sustain them. The one highlight is that we, unlike other cities, we were able to maintain any programs that we started with ARPA. We were able to still maintain all those programs through our budget. We were able to keep the property tax levy flat and also not cut any programs. And I think that those are very, very high level updates that you can get to. And as you get granular, we still were able to have strong public safety programs. Our Peace Collective, which is 23 plus organizations, that's still continuing. The expansion of our tree beautification program, that's still continuing. Office of Financial Empowerment is still fully funded, up and operational. That's still fully funded. So those are all amazing programs and projects. Rec center hours still functioning. Having socio-emotional support in all of our centers. We started it as a pilot. That's now basically almost permanent in our programming. Summer jobs programs, our jobs programs for 12 to 14-year-olds. So all those things are still in this current budget, and that is despite us having one-time shots with ARPA, no longer having that, and still being able to maintain those services. Remember, we're spending $27 million less than we did the year before, but no services are cut and taxes were not raised. There are very few cities across the country that can say that. Oh, and by the way, our bond outlook is stable, and that's why you can't really play politics with finances and budget. And that's why I'm glad that I'm glad City Council has really worked with me closely on this, because at the end of this, what the public needs to understand is that the budget also ties to our bond rating and the overall financial health of the city. And that's boring stuff. People don't like talking about it. But you can't do any of the stuff that we just mentioned if you don't have a strong, stable financial picture. And that's what we have this year. So we're very, very excited about that. And then some newer initiatives, our action team. We funded it in last year's budget. We're funded it again in this year's budget. That's over 10 positions of new people that will be going out in the community to work on nonviolent community safety things. That is a huge undertaking. That's funded in this budget. So we've been able to juvenile justice pilot that we have in our program to deal with young people who have more of a propensity to get in trouble through our Department of Recreation and Human Services. Another newer program that is that is funded in this budget. So lots of initiatives that we will be able to continue, but also a couple of new things that are also encapsulated in this budget.
There's a few things I want to build on there, but before that, I want to turn to Miguel and Mitch. Miguel, I'll start with you. I mean, what are some of the standouts here, the highlights of this year's budget?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mayor talked about the things that are not as critically, we'll say not as sexy, if you will, but it's important to note that before the budget came to council, the mayor actually closed a $97.5 million gap. So, first and foremost, this budget really does support our employees. We had no layoffs despite the economic upheaval nationally and all the things going on. I think it's smart about how we've looked at and used our fund balance and maintained our reserves. But in terms of programs and services, the NEO program continues, which is something we just started. I was heavily part of that team to help develop the concept with the mayor's support. And we were able to continue that program as well as enhance staffing for it by adding 4 positions in our neighborhood service center. So we have one in each quad of the city that really helps cultivate community activity citywide. Our code enforcement is intact. We did not cut any positions there. I think the next steps there, and this is something we've all been talking about, is how do we make sure that we're providing support and efficiency in our code enforcement, continuous training and development, so that our staff continues to improve our code enforcement citywide. We also have some very high-profile and wonderful opportunities for more affordable housing in our city that's funded in this budget. Fernwood Apartments, Los Lamboyanes, and Gardner Lofts are 3 critical projects that there's seed funds that are included in this budget. The mayor mentioned the action team. I would also add that in addition to the action team, we have 2 recruit classes for RPD that are budgeted in this upcoming budget. And the question is, can we fill those positions? But we do have the emphasis and the support for that. And then I guess for now, the last thing I'll highlight is we're investing in youth in many different ways. But one of the ways is that at the Trenton and Pamela Jackson Arts Center, we have a new esports gaming lounge that's going to be developed as part of this. So there's a lot of exciting stuff that are coming down the pipe through this process. And I think this year we really have a lot of emphasis on public projects, public art, and creating amenities for our young people.
Mitch, any highlights there that you want to mention?
Yeah, I want to build upon what the mayor was talking about and just kind of pull back a little bit for listeners out there. So you hear the acronym ARPA a lot. The American Recovery Plan Act, which feels like forever ago, was an infusion of $210 million into the city of Rochester. It was actually very rare. I'm not sure ever before there's been so much direct money from the federal government directly to municipalities. And it wasn't just us. It was every municipality. Monroe County got, $100+ million. Yep. The Rochester City School District got a ton of ARPA dollars, and every municipality around the country got some. But just here in the city of Rochester, we got $210 million. And so you may ask, where did all that money go? Not all of it has been spent yet, but all of it has been appropriated and promised. And if you want to know what the single biggest expense of ARPA that we use was to replace over 80% of lead service lines in Rochester. So the issue that so many cities are facing now, and frankly, many of them close to us, is that when you get an infusion of $210 million into your budget, and it was formula-based, so every city got a different amount. When you get that much money infused at once, it is very hard to wean yourself off. Imagine your household budget if all of a sudden you got this big, giant influx and you started to develop a different kind of lifestyle and paid higher for XYZ thing, and then the money went away. It's a challenge. And many cities have struggled with that. I will tell you that just to our west, the city of Buffalo was basically on a fiscal cliff because they had so much additional money into their city and they had so many issues with their fiscal practices that they had to actually go above the tax cap and raise taxes substantially for people several times, I believe, over the last couple of years, but certainly last year was the big one. This budget, despite what some people, particularly on the campaign trail, like to talk about, this budget is not a reduction in services for the city of Rochester. We have a $27 million less than last year's annual budget, but the vast majority of that is capital projects like the lead service lines that we brought into the city, and they're gone now. This budget, the number one highlight is that we are not cutting any major services. When if you look at New York City, they're trying to cut library hours year after year. You don't see cut library hours in Rochester. That's critically important. And the last thing I'll say about ARPA is that what makes what we did particularly, I think, stand out is that we created programs that then we leveraged for additional dollars and they continue to live. So I'll give you two examples. One, the tree canopy. We made a commitment to plant 6,000 new trees. We use ARPA dollars to literally and figuratively seed that, and then we leverage it for additional dollars from the federal government. And now we have money that's not ARPA money that's going to go towards that. Our Vision Zero commitment, which I've been on the show to talk about many times, which is about eliminating traffic and traffic fatalities for bikers, pedestrians, drivers, bus riders, whomever, everyone. That was started with ARPA dollars. And we leveraged that to $23 million federal dollars to do pedestrian safety measures across the city that will be implemented. That's in the capital budget of what that we just passed. So that is what a good, smart city does, is you take money, you don't put yourself on a fiscal cliff where you have to go then raise taxes dramatically, and you leverage it for new programs that can either be done, like the lead service line replacements, or that can be turned into new funding sources like Vision Zero and Tree Canopy. We did that successfully, effectively, and everyone in this community is going to benefit from it.
Yeah, Mayor, I think we have talked about that before, that Rochester's position with the ARPA dollars was it wasn't used to fill in budget gaps so much as it was for, there was quite a few pilot programs. GBI was one of the, Guaranteed Basic Income was one of them. By the Block, the first phase was funded through ARPA dollars. So just one, if you had anything to add from what Mitch's comments were, how that made it more
I think
sustainable
one of the
for
things
this
I did
budget.
was I did an analysis of if we ended up having a program that was successful and we liked the program, or we liked the initiative that we were doing, if we wanted to be able to continue it, my question to all of my department heads were, how would we be able to do it when ARPA went away? And that's why you see the continuation of socio-emotional support. It's why you see the continuation of my my quest to be the Johnny Appleseed of mayors in terms of planting 6,000 trees, which, by the way, we're going to actually exceed 6,000. And we were able to, as Councilmember Gruber said, get other dollars there. So I think for us, I'm also always concerned about the future fiscal health of Rochester, because we see across the country right now cities that are in dire fiscal straits. That can happen to any of us. And by the way, the whole time we were composing this budget, we had all the nonsense that's happening at the federal government going on in the back of our mind, and we still have that going on in the back of our mind, and we are prepared for. I talked about on this show a couple of months ago. No, I think it was last month or the month before, about what we will do if we have those cuts from the federal government, and it won't be pretty, but we are prepared to handle that when we did that. But we wanted to be clear that in order for Rochester to have a strong fiscal house, which is something that a lot of people don't understand and don't realize how important it was critical that we not try to use temporary money, or a sugar high, as I call it, to try to plug holes that we know would not be fiscally prudent or responsible. Because at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure that we were not going to go back on any of our promises. Too many times we've seen in government where people start a program and then they pull back once the money's going away and they can't be able to continue it. So Peace Collective, almost all that was ARPA, but we are now prepared in our planning to make sure that the Peace Collective continues onward. The dollar amount might not be as large, but the concept will be able to still continue to be able to move forward. And then we kept some programs that don't get a lot of attention. We actually expanded our in this program, for example, our composting program. That is one of the most popular programs we have in the city, but it doesn't get a lot of attention. But in this budget, we actually expanded that. Another thing that didn't get attention in the budget, we didn't call it out. I called it out in the press release. It's something I know Councilmember Gruber is very interested in, is the public market. In this budget, we are funding a study for the public market, because we want to take our public market to the next level. We have one of the best public markets in the country. I would say top 5. I would argue with anybody. I'd say Mitch, I would say top 5.
It's number 1.
Yeah, Mitch says number 1. Detroit's good, Cleveland's good. But we have money in the budget that we were able to do that again. And then we also did not stop our roof repair and vacant housing dollars as well. We used ARPA dollars for that. But we also are using local money for that, and then we also leverage THIP dollars from New York State as well. So for us, it's all about how you can have a continuation of programs that work, scale them up to try to meet more people, and then also continue to do some newer initiatives that might make sense as well.
So just to contextualize this, when I mentioned the $27 million drop from last year's budget, most of that is accounted for by ARPA. It's about $20 million
That's right.
of the reduction.
That's right.
So I look at the kind of situation we're in as a city that you just kind of alluded to, where there's a twofold thing happening. One is the end of the ARPA dollars. They all have to be encumbered or spent at this point. And then there is the threat from the federal government. Two of the people that are being sued by the federal government over the sanctuary city policy are sitting in this room right now. Miguel and you, Mayor, are both named in that lawsuit. Now, the pulling of the funding called for by the Trump administration against sanctuary cities has been blocked by the courts. For now. Who knows what happens next? But I was wondering if you could give us some context here of if it were to happen, what would the result be? I mean, what would we actually see happen in the city?
Well, first off, it would be disastrous if we got any federal funding pulling. And remember, and let me just say that these are taxpayer dollars that New York sends to D.C. There's only been in the last 10 years, last 20 years, 2 years in which we've gotten more money back from the federal government than we spent, and that was during ARPA and the CARES Act dollars. We send more money to DC than we get back. So these dollars that they're talking about pulling, it's like somebody coming into your house and saying, "Hey, how you doing? You want to buy a pizza? I want to buy you a pizza," but then they're using your money. So they are using our money. This is our money that we have that we are fighting against. But if they tried to pull any of our money back, it would be disastrous. It would mean that we would not be able to do some of the programs that we do, or we'd have to scale them back, such as roof repair for seniors, such as housing people with AIDS. It would be disastrous for our city. We don't think that will happen because we know we are on the right side of history. We think that the lawsuit is frivolous, and really what this gets down to is the basic 10th Amendment, which says that the federal government cannot have us use our resources to do their job, just like how we don't ask them to do our job for them. And it's as simple as that. So they're suing us, but we are also suing them. We just joined a lawsuit a couple of weeks ago, Trump versus San Francisco. We are now a part of that lawsuit. And then the week before that, we just filed a lawsuit for them trying to take appropriated EPA funding. So we hope that the courts will continue to use good judgment here and that they will continue to follow the rule of law. But this budget will always have over its head the possibility of the federal government trying to pull that money back, but we are not going to make any cuts or changes until we know that will be for sure, because we are going to continue to litigate these things through the court. So it's a to be determined on these court cases that are happening, and they continue to go on, and we've got a lot of them, and we're probably going to have a lot more that we'll be filing as well.
It also doesn't just to answer your question in a different way. It doesn't happen in one chunk, right? Like, we don't get a huge amount of federal dollars as a city in one distinct category. So as the mayor talked about with the EPA funds, largely these things are going to come in piece by piece, bit by bit in terms of challenges from the Trump administration. And so we can't really have a contingency budget that says what happens if this happens, because this could be 700 different things. I also just want to draw people's attention not just to the reality of cuts of particular programs, but let's be very clear: the Republican-led federal government is leading us directly into a recession as we speak, and sales tax is a significant way cities fund themselves. So we have to be prepared and thoughtful about what are we going to do as a city as we see sales tax numbers, which were very good under the Biden administration, by the way, and continue to rise as people had money to spend in their pockets. What are we going to do if that number decreases? We have to accept the fact that, unfortunately, the Republican House majority and Senate majority just voted for a bill that's going to cut the social safety net out from beneath people in the form of SNAP and Medicaid. That is not going to have an impact on the city's budget that you're talking about today, but it's going to have an impact on people's needs in Rochester. Mm-hmm. And so these things are so kind of amorphous that you can't just have a backup budget that says, okay, if this happens, we'll do this. They are all piece by piece, and we need to be thoughtful, strategic, and constantly figuring out how to stay one step ahead.
Yeah, I think what I'll add is two things. One, there was also a motion to intervene on the lawsuit by NYCLU with two nonprofits and two faith-based organizations. So I think there's a lot of support for standing up our existing sanctuary city policy, and we'll continue to stand on that. But the other part of this is, there's also recourse legislatively that I think others are talking about. So not locally, but in the state's delegation, there's conversations about the Recourse Act, which is something that's relatively new in concept, but basically it's talking about the resources that we do send to the federal government. Should we have an issue in any particular municipality or in the state, could the state withhold funds from being sent to the federal government in absence of getting a cut? So there's a lot of conversations that are happening from a legislative perspective to protect cities and cities, counties, and New York State. But I do think that what we can do and what we can plan for is to be nimble. We already, in our last budget, we had some resources through council PAB underruns where we allocated $1 million to a reserve for CDBG-related activities. So should that be something that is considered as a future cut, we do have $1 million in the bank right now, per se, to be able to allocate towards those needs. But frankly, it is certainly a time that we did not anticipate just a year ago, but we're here and we're going to figure it out.
And the other thing I'll say that is just as a concern as much as those cuts that they're trying to make to sanctuary cities is this upcoming federal budget. Remember, so Rochester's budget starts July 1st. Monroe County budget is on a calendar year, and then the federal government, guess what? They got to come up with a new budget by October 1st. The current skinny budget that is proposed from the federal government right now zeroes out CDBG dollars.
Yep.
That's over $10 million to the city of Rochester. That would be devastating. The sequestration budget, bill, policy that just happened, that didn't require 60 votes, right? That just cut Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid, in a major way, where the millions of New Yorkers are going to be thrown off Medicaid. I don't think people realize that yet because it's not happening immediately. It's something that's going to happen down the line. So that is going to be that's going to have a major impact on any of the fiscal things that we talk about. So it's amazing how everything that we're talking about here related to a budget, how Washington is now intruding and playing such a larger than life role in our fiscal matters. And that has never happened before. I've worked for city council. I've been on city council. I've been in the mayor's office for almost 4 years. And we never had to worry about, we're doing our budget. Let's see what the federal government's doing. This is the first time ever where I've crafted a budget in 4 years as mayor and as years as being on city council and being chair of finance on city council, where we've had to have in the back of our mind what's happening at the federal level and how it's affecting our budget. And it's really unfortunate. And I hope we can go back to the days when we used to not have to worry about that.
So I want to get a comment from Jason, who's watching on YouTube, because it kind of touches on something I wanted to ask as well. So he's asking, can they talk about what goes into deciding to keep the tax levy the same? I worry that without annual increases, our revenue won't keep up with inflation, and we limit what we can fund in the future. And just given
Great
context
question.
a little bit, I mean, the tax levy did remain the same. We had a reassessment last year that saw
Right.
property values go way, way up. So I would like to know a little bit about balancing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, you can't to be good fiscal stewards. You can't keep the tax levy. You cannot raise the tax levy. You can't keep it the same forever, right? But you do have to look at macroeconomic factors that are happening. So this year, I did not bring a tax levy increase to city council simply because I continue to look at the rate of inflation, and then I continue to look at if we were still able to perform the services that we could without raising the levy, right? But if we want to continue to maintain services, there will come a time where we will have to look at reassessing if we raise the levy. I try to do everything I could to not have to do that. But if for example, if we would have had to close a rec center, right? Do you want to close a rec center or do you want to raise the levy? So there are trade-offs that you have to be able to look at. This year, we were blessed in that I wasn't presented with that type of dilemma, but that is not to say that in the future we won't be presented with that type of dilemma, and it will make sense for us to raise the levy. So he asked a very, very good and important question. And from a fiscal standpoint, even our rating agencies will look at how often we raise our levy, when we should raise our levy, because we want to make sure that we do what's fiscally prudent, but at the same time we want to also balance the needs of taxpayers. But inflation is still too high. People are still trying to keep up with prices that the president said would come down on January 1st, which they have not. So I took all of that into consideration when I proposed the budget to City Council in terms of keeping the levy flat.
And sorry.
Miguel, then Mitch. We'll go that way.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I think the reality is we might be looking at that in the next 2 years or so, pending what happens with the federal budget and what cuts are coming our way. I mean, certainly CDBG, all the dollars that go into our home repair programs, our roof repair programs, funds about 50 staff members in the city government. Should that be cut and zeroed out, as the mayor was alluding to, that's something that might trigger us having to look at raising the levy in the upcoming budget. So, again, this is where I said earlier we have to remain nimble and flexible, but I think that we're entering times where this is something that we really have to consider.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'm so happy that this program is talking about the actual mechanics of the budget versus talking about kind of pie in the sky programmatic ideas. Because the mechanics of the budget are that we have a three-legged stool. The vast majority of funding for the city of Rochester comes from three sources: property tax, sales tax, and state aid. I mean, you could actually call it state and federal, but pass-through dollars from other governments, right? And the reality is, for the last several years, sales tax has been really, really good. If you looked at a chart of sales tax in the city of Rochester and the county of Monroe, it has continued to climb every year as people, particularly since the pandemic, since the worst part of the pandemic, have had more money to spend in their pocket. The economy has largely been, it hasn't been necessarily good for every individual person, but spending has been up, right? There's almost no doubt about that from a sales tax perspective. So it's probably not the right time to increase property taxes when sales tax is doing well. If we get into a position now where, as I said, it feels like the Republican administration in Washington is trying to lead us into a recession, it feels like that's what they're actually trying to do. They may say differently, but it's not what it appears like. If recession hits and sales tax comes down, we have to figure out how to continue services from a different leg of the stool. And also remember state aid, getting funding from New York State. When things are better, we get more money from New York State. So there's a correlation between sales tax being higher and state aid being a little bit higher. And if those things begin to dip or stagnate, then we have to make the smart decision and look at property taxes. But thank goodness we haven't had to for a while. And again, we've not seen services cut. In fact, let's talk about a particular service for a second. This is the first time, knock on this table, this is the first time in a long time that we've had every single pool open by July 4th in the city of Rochester, staffed with enough lifeguards where everybody can go swim at GVP. People can swim on the beach. We have the pools over at Lightfoot and at Avenue D. We have more and more services that are being offered now that years ago we actually couldn't because of a staffing crunch we were in. So we didn't need to talk about property taxes the last couple of years, but we may need to in the future.
And the other thing that's very important to point out, this is the first time in Rochester's history that sales tax has outpaced property tax as our major source of revenue in the budget. So property tax is now second to sales tax. So sales tax is our number one revenue source now. So that's why when people say, why do you talk so much about making sure that we diversify our income? This is why. Because we know that we derive a lot of revenue now from sales tax. So we have to make sure that we do things to get people to continue to spend money that can support our overall budget. So it's definitely an art and not a science. I appreciate the question because it's a good one, and I'm glad that there's listeners out there that are thinking about this stuff as much as I am.
Yeah, and this kind of dovetails with another question. I mean, sales tax outpacing property tax, to me, indicates that our home ownership rate is not going up very much. People are spending more money outside of that rather than
not necessarily. Remember, we have a huge taxable base. We just did a huge assessment. Remember,
yes,
because the homes are still owned.
Yeah, they still own. People still. And remember, we also get taxes from people who own. It's just the fact that sales tax was doing so well. That's why it went up. So it's not. There's no correlation between. Obviously, we want to increase the home ownership rate, right? But if someone is, Gino, I'm sure you know this, that if someone is renting, that property is owned by someone, and we're getting property tax from it.
Fair, yeah.
Okay, you understand? I mean,
yeah,
I
do
want to give a
understand
lesson
that
here, but yeah. So that there's no correlation between that and mortgage ownership. Now we want to increase the number of people who own homes, if that's what they desire to do. Yes, we want to do that. But the reason why you're seeing the property tax, the sales tax go up is because across the country, because of the infusion of federal money that got stimulus checks and all those other things, that increased the number of sales tax. So yeah, but there's no correlation between
property tax is going to be a static number.
Right. So if I rent from you, I'm still getting property tax, not from you, but I'm getting it from the owner that you're living in.
Right. Yeah. To that point though, how do you increase that home ownership rate? Buy the Block is still funded in this budget.
And we just built some more homes. You got to do innovative and creative things. We just announced in the Northeast District that we are that we are going to build a bunch of homes on city vacant lots that private industry will be building. They will be buying the lots from the city. And what you got to do is you got to build. You got to be able to make more opportunities. Rochester, by the way, people forget that sometimes I have to remind people nationally. And statewide, you know what city people are looking at as it relates to home ownership as well as building affordable homes? Rochester, New York. Rochester, New York. We just featured in a video on homes and community renewal for our Buy the Block program. The state has modeled a program after Rochester called Block by Block, which we're also going to take advantage of. So this administration has taken the creative and bold step to build, baby, build. We just cut the ribbon. I think you were with me 2 weeks ago, Mr. President. Yeah. We started in the Northeast and we were in the Southwest. Were we on Superior Street?
Superior Street.
We were on Superior Street and we cut the ribbon on some new homes that were built there. And then the RFP is due, I think, in another week for the new homes that will be built over in the Scioto Street neighborhood on vacant lots that are there. So the strategy is you have to build as much as you can, but the other thing is you have to create the capacity for people to be able to become homeowners if they decide to. And I also want to say we should not look down upon renters. I remember there were some people saying, we got too many people renting. Well, some people choose to rent. If that's what they want to do, damn it, this is a democracy. They can choose to rent. Not everyone has to own, but if they want to own, we need to make sure that we create the conditions for them to be able to do that. And how you do that is by partnering with others who can build as many single-family homes or condos or other things. Those are other things that we are looking at. Co-ops, those are other things that we are looking at to make the supply better. The problem that you have in New York City and some of these other places is they have not created the supply. And it's basic economics. When you don't have a supply and you have a higher demand, that means that you can charge more, number one. And number two, it also means that you don't have as many choices for people to be able to choose from. So our goal is to build as many new housing units, be they rental or for home ownership through partnerships as much as possible. And I think that's how you increase the home ownership rate.
Mitchell, go to you first.
Yeah, two things I want to add. First, the first step in really doing and really being able to facilitate the build, baby, build concept is finalizing our new zoning code, which needs to happen yesterday, and I'm confident that it'll happen this calendar year. We will have something before council to vote on. That is an assurance that I know that the mayor feels the same way, and we're working on that. And once we have a new zoning code, there will be more opportunity for different types of buildings. Right now in Rochester, you don't see a whole lot of things like condos and townhouses and co-ops, in part because our zoning code makes those things difficult. We can change that with more modern zoning. So that's one. But the other is it's not just about building. Building is super important. I couldn't agree more that that's what we should be focused on. But there are also so many habitable properties in Rochester that are vacant. And that is a place where code enforcement needs to be the other piece of this. If we have properties that predominantly absentee landlords are not paying close attention to and are taking it out of a place of habitability, and it's not being rented, and this is why people ask about tickets about grass not being cut. But when your grass is 2 feet high, it's a pretty good indication that no one's paying attention to the property. We need to make sure that we are using code enforcement to make it uncomfortable for people who are being absentee, derelict landlords who are also not even landlords at all and not occupying the property, and make sure that those are places that have opportunities to be bought by folks. That we have, and I'm sure Miguel's going to talk about land bank and how we have all these different tools that we can use, but the first thing is having more inventory. And you get that in two ways: building and taking what's already out there and being underutilized.
Yeah, great segue, Mitch. I think the land bank is an opportunity. I've brought this up many times with the administration. I think it's something we'll be working on next couple of years. But, other cities utilize their land banks as property management and are able to secure the properties and then sell to first-time home buyers or other people who are going to be occupants of the units. So I think we could do a lot more in that space. The other thing is we need to support homeowners that currently own. And I think, in this budget, we have the New York State Targeted Home Improvement Program that will provide resources to current homeowners to make sure that they can stay in the properties that they're in and rehab those properties. The city of Rochester has historically been a place where the state has really looked at us as the leaders in development of housing. And I think there's opportunities with the AHOP program at the state level, which subsidize single-family projects for home ownership. We have one that's going to be in the Northeast, First Genesis project. So I think that's an exciting prospect to recreate opportunities similar to the First Genesis housing project, which I think is 21 units of single-family home ownership opportunities. But I do think that the inventory that we have currently, the existing housing stock, we have to reevaluate what we do with our auction processes and our land bank and create more opportunities for home ownership in the city.
We're going to take our first and only break of the hour, and we're going to take some calls when we get back.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Genesee Country Village and Museum, hosting Pride Week to celebrate the history of the LGBTQ community with the opportunity to attend a drag brunch, add to the community engagement banner, and more July 16th through 20th. Tickets online at gcv.org. And Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
And we're back on Connections. I'm going to take our first caller of the hour, Jenny in Rochester. Jenny, go ahead.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. First, I'm thrilled that you guys are talking about the budget. I want to understand it better. And it would help me out if y'all could define some terms that you threw around that I wasn't aware of. PAB underrun. I know PAB is Police Accountability Board, but I'm not sure, Miguel, what you meant by underrun. And then also I wonder if you could define CGBD dollars. And I look forward to hearing about the guaranteed basic income plans in the budget too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so CDBG, and I'll let Miguel define the other one, is Community Development Block Grant money. That's money that comes from housing and urban development, and it goes specifically to cities and some towns. But CDBG is money that comes from the federal government. It funds a lot of housing, roof repair, and a bunch of other miscellaneous items. But CDBG is Community Development Block Grant funding.
Yes, and underruns every department at the end of the year evaluates whether they have resources remaining in their budget lines. And so this year and in subsequent years, prior years, we've had underruns in both the PAB and the council budget office, which is one department. We're all in one department. So that's where the funding was able to be reallocated into the new budget year through budgetary intent.
And take another call from Andrew in Irondequoit.
Hey, you guys. I love you guys. I love what you guys do. I think you need to get out of the housing business. Why don't you just let people buy lots and builders build without all your involvement.
Yeah, I don't. First off, the city's not in the housing business. The city doesn't own a single house. But I think you're right. We are simply facilitators. The houses that were built, for example, through Buy the Block, were built through private folks. So I agree with you. We're not in the housing business. It's not what we do. Our job is simply facilitating the purchasing of our lots, which is why we have a RFP, and a private person will buy that lot. Any of our affordable housing projects are run by the private industry. So the city's not. So to your point, and to answer your question, the city's not in the housing business. We don't collect rent from anybody. We don't build houses ourselves. We partner with others.
And the new zoning code is very much about trying to make sure there's less red tape to get through to be able to build. But the government also has a responsibility to make sure that things are permitted and zoned appropriately, so that we're actually being good stewards of public land and public resources. So that is the balance that I think cities need to strike right now: is how can we both remove red tape while also making sure that we're doing our job as permitting and licensing entities. And I think I think in the city of Rochester, the new zoning code will strike that balance very well.
So I do want to touch on some of the programs that were started under ARPA that aren't continuing right now. And I think one of the big ones is guaranteed basic income. And Mitch, we've talked about this a lot over the years about whether or not the city could sustain a program like that going forward. So I want to start with you on that. I mean, it's not funded in this year's budget. It was previously funded by ARPA dollars. Do you see a path for the city funding it, or is there another avenue that it needs to go through for guaranteed basic income to become a permanent program here?
I'm sorry that I feel like a broken record on this subject here, but I'm gonna say something I've said several times before on this show. Back in the Warren administration, I wrote a letter to Mayor Warren at the time and asked her to join what Mayor Tubbs out of Stockton, California, who started the first guaranteed income program, and as a phenomenal leader. Mayor Tubbs started an organization called Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. I'm not sure if it actually got started under Mayor Warren or if it was Mayor Evans, but the city is now a proud participant. Mayor looks like it was you. Either way, the city is a proud participant in Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. The purpose of this initiative was for cities to demonstrate that guaranteed income works, so that the places that actually print money can start to incorporate it. Cities have to pass balanced on-time budgets. As Miguel said before, Mayor Evans and his team started with a $97 million budget deficit this year. There is no money for the city to start a guaranteed income program. The places that print money is the federal government, and frankly, sometimes it feels like New York State prints money. For example, the state legalized online sports gambling and took a pretty big cut of that. I don't know where all the money goes to, but I'll tell you this much: none of it goes to the city of Rochester. So we don't have ability to raise new revenues substantially to do anything close to a long-term sustainable guaranteed income program. What we did with the ARPA dollars was demonstrate that it works, and it did. And I'm sure the mayor will talk about when the report's coming out. But at this point, very few people argue that guaranteed income as a program works. The question is, who's going to pay for it? And what I question right now is why we spend all this time talking about guaranteed income when we just watched the federal government cut by $300 billion the most impactful social safety net in the country, which is food stamp benefits or SNAP benefits. So thinking about a world right now when the Republicans, again, are trying to gut the entire social safety net, that a cash-strapped city like Rochester can start a program while the feds are cutting the safety net feels to me like it's pie in the sky and not the place for us to be focusing our attention.
Mayor, anything you want to add to that?
The only thing I'll add is, we have a program right now that we're working with the county on. We got $25 million in poverty aid. It's a direct cash program, very similar to guaranteed basic income. More to come on that, and I think that is that will have promise and will probably show some great opportunity there. I think another thing I wanted to mention in ARPA that we started doing and we are continuing is that we want to be lead free by 2030. We want to make sure that all of our drinking water, we don't want to be like Jackson, Mississippi or Flint, Michigan. We want to make sure that future generations have access to clean drinking water. We're continuing that program. Even after ARPA was gone, we were able to go to New York State and get dollars. We're using local dollars for that. And we're we even got some federal money from that. We passed it together. Other cities are looking to Rochester to see how we were doing this, and we are pretty positive that by 2030 we will have every single lead line replaced in Rochester. And then not only that, we did something also very unique. We not only are replacing, and we just replaced the 10,000th line. I celebrated replacing the 10,000th line about 4 weeks ago. We also replaced the lines that went inside of the house as well. If somebody had a line in their house that had lead in it, we also did that. So that was an ARPA initiative that we started, but because of good planning, good partnerships with levels of government, finding money everywhere we can, that's a project that is going to have a lasting impact on Rochester to come. We're really making sure that we invest in our water infrastructure. Just the other day, you heard about a Holly line breaking, which sent water gushing all over the place. These investments in our water infrastructure are absolutely critical, and we've done that through ARPA, and we're going to continue to do that in the years to come. So we've shown that as programs work, that we've been able to sustain them if they make sense. Same thing with the Peace Collective. That's going to continue. Our same thing with our Advanced Peace Program. That was all funded by ARPA. Now that is now completely funded by local dollars. So we have the ability when we're able, if we plan correctly, to be able to replace those dollars. So those are some of the other projects that were funded by ARPA that we're still continuing.
I bring these things up because the budget passed 6-3 with Council members Stanley Martin, Mary Lupien, and Kim Smith voting no. And these were some of the things that were brought up in some of those conversations about why they voted no. And another one that Councilmember Martin had brought up was the funding of a public utility study. This would be public utility that replaced RG&E. This has been a long time call from advocates here. It would also be arguably the biggest development project the city had ever engaged in if it was done. I mean, we're talking multiple billions of dollars. But this budget doesn't move towards actually doing that study. But is that something you guys see as feasible? Miguel, I'll start with you on that. You've heard a lot from at council from advocates from Metro Justice and other people that are in support of a public utility. So I just want to get some of your thoughts on it.
Sure. Well, I want to answer the GBI question first, and then I'll answer that question. So I'll be the slightly different answer, maybe contrarian a little bit. I don't think that the city of Rochester, to Mitch's point, can fund a GBI program within the context of where we are today. I do think we can be facilitators, and I think this report will probably give us a sense of where we can go in that direction because, similar to what we've done with the NEA grant, where we got outside partners to find the resources, and we pay some administrative fees, if you will, to help implement. I think something like that could be happening in this space down the road. So I just want to answer that. With respect to the public utility question, let me start with this. I'm the only sitting legislator as a leader of a legislative body that has allocated money to the possibility of a study. I did it twice. This year, it's sitting in reserve. There's been money that's sitting in reserve. I'm not interested in studying power in Webster or Irondequoit or Penfield or Pittsford. And if the question is, should the city be studying power in those spaces, my vote is no. And there was no proposal to put anything forward this year. There might have been some clamoring around it, but there was no proposal put forward. And at this point, I think the real question is, how do we hold RG&E accountable? What can we do around the Public Service Commission? Could we study different energy types? Could we increase the amount of energy we can produce here locally? The question of can the city implement a RG&E-like infrastructure here in the city of Rochester by ourselves? To me, the answer is already no. So why waste my money or the city's money or the taxpayers' monies on studying something we know the answer to? So that's where I am. If there was a bigger picture conversation about the future and it involved other municipalities, towns, villages, etc., I've already proven that I'll be at the table for those kind of discussions. But as far as the city of Rochester studying RG&E or studying a public utility by ourselves, it doesn't make economic or fiscal sense. And I have a fiscal responsibility to the taxpayer.
Mitch, anything you want to add there?
When we initially, I voted for the measure that Miguel put forward. When we initially did so, we did so asking for Monroe County's participation, but I also just want to point out that RG&E covers 8 counties. And if we are going to do something substantial that requires billions and billions of dollars of assets, it would be very nice to know there are other governmental entities that want to participate in this. I also really want to understand where New York State stands on this. New York State is a responsible entity for regulating RG&E, who, by the way, is 100% failing this community in many, many ways. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it from my position. They have regulatory authority in New York State via the Public Service Commission, and that's a place where I'm still looking for answers and seeking out how we can find people in New York State who want to answer for what to do. I'll share one last thing, and I wrote an article about this in the Beacon a few weeks ago. In the Hudson Valley, where their utility company is having similar massive problems in the community from both a customer service and a service delivery perspective, the state delegation there put forward legislation to actually create a new public utility, not having to study and trying to beg and figure out different municipalities and jurisdictions and towns to participate, but actual state legislation, because the state has the authority to do this, to create a new public utility. I would love to understand where we are as a community in exploring that.
And I'll say this,
yeah.
Rochester can't do it alone, okay? Rochester cannot do it alone. It just can't. And that was the deal in the beginning, if you remember, that in order for Rochester to do it, there were going to be others that were going to come along. Yes, remember that? But people seem to have forgotten that. But that was the deal.
All right. Well, this has been Connections. We've been talking about the city budget. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Eben Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.